Hey, what's up guys? Combat Critique here. Let's take a look at this upcoming fight between Song Yadong and Chris Gutierrez. Let's get started. If we take a look at the records of these two guys, starting with Song. So Song has 29 fights in total and he's won 20 of his 29 fights, lost 7. He also has one draw as well as a no contest on his record. If we take a look at his 20 wins, he has 9 of them via knockout, so he is a knockout guy. Most of his wins have been via knockout. He also has 3 submission wins on his record as well as 8 decision wins. If we talk about his 7 losses, he has 2 of them via knockout and 4 via decision. He has also been disqualified once. Pretty exciting fighter to watch, but he has been knocked out. Now let's take a look at Chris Gutierrez's record. So Chris has 27 fights in total and he has won 20 of his 27 fights, lost 5, and he also has 2 draws on his record. If we talk about his 20 wins, he has 9 of them via knockout, same as Song Yadong, and just 1 win via submission and another 10 via decision. So this man is a striker and most of his wins have been decision wins, not knockout. If we talk about his 5 losses, he has never been knocked out, and Song Yadong has been stopped twice via knockout, once via doctor stoppage, and this was the fight that he had with Corey Sandhagen, and before that was his fight when he was not in the UFC where he got KO'd. However, Chris Gutierrez has never been KO'd in his 27 fights so far. He has 1 loss via submission and 4 via decision. If we talk about just decision fights for both these guys, they don't have a good record when it comes to decision fights. Song Yadong is 8-4 in decisions and Chris Gutierrez is 10-4. Now let's take a look at the physical and career stats. Starting with the height, height is 5'8" for Song Yadong and it is 5'9" for Chris Gutierrez. So Chris will have a slight 1-inch height advantage. Weight will be even at 135 pounds for both these guys unless somebody misses weight. Reach is 67 inches for Song and it is also 67 for Chris. And talking about the stance, it is again orthodox for both these guys. If we talk about the age, Song is clearly the younger fighter by about 6 years. I think age can definitely play a factor. However, Chris is not old by any means. He is 32 years old. He is in his prime physically right now. Now let's take a look at the career stats. Starting up with the strikes landed per minute. Now this signifies the number of significant strikes that you land on your opponents per minute on average. This is 4.61 for Song Yadong and it is 5.04 for Chris Gutierrez. So Chris has an advantage here because he is landing quite a bit more significant strikes per minute on his opponents. Next up, we have the striking accuracy, which is 42% for Song Yadong and it is 57% for Chris Gutierrez. Again, the advantage goes to Chris. He is more accurate with his strikes. Next up, we have the strikes absorbed per minute and this is the opposite of strikes landed per minute. This signifies the number of significant strikes that you absorb from your opponents per minute on average. This is 3.77 for Song and it is 2.73 for Chris. In this case, the guy with the lower number has an advantage because he is getting hit lesser. So again, the advantage goes to Chris. Next up, we have the striking defense, which is 59% for Song and 65% for Chris. So again, Chris has an advantage here. Overall, in all the 4 metrics that we have seen so far, which were the striking metrics, Chris Gutierrez has an advantage. I think most people are ignoring this fact and a lot of people are thinking that Song is the better striker, but looking at the stats, Chris Gutierrez is actually the better striker in this fight. He is ahead in all the 4 metrics, whether it is the offensive part or the defensive striking part. Now let's take a look at the wrestling, grappling and BJJ stats between these two guys, starting with the takedown average. Takedown average is 0.53 for Song and it is 0.34 for Chris. So here, for the first time, the advantage goes to Song. Takedown accuracy is 55% for Song Yadong and it is 37% for Chris. So again, the advantage goes to Song. Takedown defense 72% for Song Yadong and 71% for Chris Gutierrez. A very slight advantage goes to Song. Even both these, I think both these guys are even, but a very slight advantage goes to Song Yadong. Submission average is zero point 0.2 for Song and zero point 0.1 for Chris Gutierrez. Both these guys don't really have a lot of submissions and it's pretty even, but a slight advantage again goes to Song. So in the striking, there is a clear advantage to Chris Gutierrez. Whereas if this fight goes to the ground, a slight advantage goes to Song. He has better submissions, but it's not a lot. His takedown average is slightly higher. His takedown accuracy is clearly better than that of Chris Gutierrez. Takedown defense is just slightly better. So overall, looking at these stats, I think Chris Gutierrez, if he wants to win, he should keep this fight standing. Whereas Song, if Song wants to win this fight, he should use his wrestling, use his grappling. But I don't think Song will do that. He will keep this fight standing, and on the standing, I think Chris clearly has an advantage. Now let's move on. Significant strikes by position, the significant strikes by target between these two guys. But first, let's talk about the knockdown average, which is 0.74 for Song Yadong and 0.56 for Chris Gutierrez. This is a measure of how much power these two guys have, and Song Yadong is having slightly more power because his knockdown average is slightly higher. This is the only striking metric that favors Song Yadong. In all the previous 4 metrics, they were all favoring Chris Gutierrez. Even in the knockdown average, it's not a huge difference. Song is slightly better in terms of power. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by position for these two guys. Starting with Song, so 85% of all his strikes are from the standing position, just 7% from the clinch and 8% on the ground. If you compare this with Chris, 94% of all his strikes are from the standing position, just 2% on the clinch and 3% on the ground. So Gutierrez is more than happy to stand and bang with you. He doesn't want to take this fight to the ground or in the clinch. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by target for both these guys. Starting with Song, 64% of all his strikes are to the head, 22% to the body and 15% to the leg. If we compare this with Chris, just 40% of all his strikes are to the head, 13% to the body and a substantial 47% to the leg. So Chris Gutierrez, who we have established is a better striker, also uses leg kicks a lot more in his game. I think all these different things give him an edge in the striking department except for the power. Song Yadong has a slightly higher knockdown average and he has slightly more power, but apart from that, Chris Gutierrez has the better defense, he has the better offense and he uses leg kicks a lot more in his game compared to Song Yadong. Song goes to the body more often than Chris Gutierrez. Previous fights of these two guys, starting with Song. So Song in his last fight beat Ricky Simon, and this fight he stopped in the 5th round via knockout, and in this fight he was clearly ahead in terms of the strikes landed. There was a huge difference between the strikes of these two guys that they were able to land, and even though Ricky Simon got 2 takedowns over Song Yadong, Song was able to land 2 knockdowns and finish the fight. Before this, however, Song lost to Corey Sandhagen and this fight was stopped in the 4th round due to a cut that Corey caused on the eyebrow of Song, and in this fight Corey was actually ahead in terms of the strikes landed. Song Yadong had 2 takedowns whereas Corey himself got 1. Before this fight, Song beat Marlon Moraes and this fight was stopped in the very first round via knockout. Before this, Song also beat Julio Ars and this fight was also stopped in the 2nd round via knockout. He beat Casey Kenny via split decision, and in this fight he was clearly ahead in terms of the strikes landed column, but Casey had 1 takedown over Song. Before this, Song lost to Kyle Phillips and this was a unanimous decision loss which happened in 2021. And in this fight, even though Song was ahead in terms of the strikes landed column, Kyler landed 3 takedowns and because of this he won the fight. Before this, Song also beat Marlon Vera. In this fight, Song was slightly ahead in terms of the strikes landed, but Vera had 2 takedowns over Song Yadong. So all these guys that we are seeing, Song Yadong is not the one taking them down. He is the one who is getting taken down. I don't think in this fight Song will try to take down Chris Gutierrez. He will try to keep the fight standing, and in the standing I think Chris has a clear-cut advantage. A lot of people are underestimating Chris right now. If we talk about the fight before this, Song also lost to Cody Stemmen, and this was a majority decision loss which happened in 2019. Cody landed 5 takedowns, and because of this he was able to win this fight. Now let's take a look at some of the previous performances of Chris Gutierrez. So Chris in his last fight beat Alain Gailey, and in this fight he was massively ahead in terms of the strikes landed, and he won the fight by unanimous decision. Before this, Chris lost to Pedro Munoz. He was ahead in terms of the strikes landed column, but Pedro got a knockdown over him early, and because of which he was able to win the fight. And before this, Chris beat Frankie Edgar, and he stopped the fight in the very first round via knockout. He also beat Bat Geril, and this fight was stopped in the second round by a spinning back fist. So Chris has good spinning attacks, but whenever he's doing them, he gets exposed. I think he should not do this in the fight with Song. Now let's take a look at some of the previous fights. Before this, Chris also beat Felipe Colares, and in this fight he was massively ahead in terms of the strikes landed column. He won the fight via split decision. He beat Andrew Erwil, and in this he was ahead in terms of the strikes landed. He got 1 knockdown. Both of these guys got 1 takedown over each other. And before this was his loss to Cody Durden, where he lost by unanimous decision. Even though he was ahead in terms of the strikes landed column, Cody got 2 takedowns and he was able to control Chris for the majority of the round. He won the fight by unanimous decision. Before this, Chris also has a win over Vince Morales. He finished the fight in the second round by knockout. Both these guys have knockouts. Both of these guys don't really use wrestling a lot. They have been taken down by more number of guys compared to how many takedowns they have gotten on other fighters. If I have to give my pick, I think I really don't see how people are giving this fight to Song Yadong. He should not be a minus 380, almost a minus 390 right here on FanDuel. I don't think he should be this favorite unless Song Yadong tries to use his wrestling, which I don't think he will. He doesn't really have a lot of chance except for a knockout or something. He has more power, but it's not a lot. He has slightly better power than Chris Gutierrez. Chris can also knock out guys, and he is the better striker. We have seen all the 4 striking metrics favor Chris Gutierrez by a huge margin. For all these reasons, I am picking a major upset. I am picking Chris for this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.